Good morning. I'm Bonnie Gardner. I'm co-chair of the Public Affairs Forum of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin. Our forums are held most Sundays at noon at 4700 Grover Avenue. They're free and open to the public. For more information on our forums, you can go to our website at www.austinuu.org. Today we have a wonderful speaker, and Dale Beulah is going to introduce Jason Saunders. Dale?
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm Dale Beulah. I am a member of our Green Sanctuary Committee here at First UU. I first met Jason at the Environmental Stewardship Committee at the Austin Independent School District, where he began the process of composting in our public schools, and he'll be talking about that today. He started his career in composting during his undergraduate studies at Texas State University, where he obtained a Bachelor of Science in Agribusiness and Management with his emphasis in horticulture. During these years, he studied methods of developing compost, the use of compost, and the importance of composting. He also rode a bike from Austin to Anchorage. Can you believe it? From Austin to Anchorage, and in his effort to fight cancer. He later created and implemented a student-run cafeteria composting program called the Bobcat Blend at Texas State. He finished his graduate studies there, receiving a master's in agricultural education. Today, he is serving as secretary of the Compost Advisory Council. He's on the Recycling and Composting Coordination for Texas Disposal Systems, and he's a professor at Texas State, teaching classes in solid waste management. So he's quite knowledgeable, and you'll enjoy his presentation, I'm sure. Jason, come up and compost us.
Thank you, Dale. Well, I'm not sure if everybody wants to be composted just yet, right? Well, good afternoon, everybody. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you very much for your time and your presence and your enjoyment in listening about composting and ways that we can divert food scraps from the landfill. Very, very passionate about this. This is what I do 18 hours of the day. The other 4 I sleep. I've been involved in the food system my entire life, just like all of us have since the day we were born. That's all I've ever done for work. Whenever I was 15, I started off as a busser and back of house kitchen at a family restaurant, and was involved with a lot of food waste at a young age at that time. And then I've worked on a farm out at Caskey's Orchards, and I've sold compost at Gardenville. I've sold peaches in the farmers markets for Caskey's Orchard, and studied it. And so I've basically lived, eat, and breathed compost for the short amount of time that I've been doing this. And so it's my passion. It's what I love doing. And I believe that we've got a very, very bright future in this. I stay very optimistic on this subject. And by being in every single food sector along the way, from the farmer's gate to the consumer's plate, I'm very optimistic. Very, very optimistic. We've come a long way, and we've got a long way to go. And this is just a brief little picture of myself holding up the only bag of trash that Apple produced that day in their cafeteria after we implemented composting. Served 2,200 employees, and we had 1 bag of trash. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the local projects that we've got going on here. I'm going to talk about the history of how we got here to the 21st century food system that we are presently in. I'm going to talk about the relationships of compost accordingly. And then just talk about the local projects that we have, and I got a little slide here to talk about some global food waste as well. A lot of this project is geared around food waste, all right? And I'll bring in composting into that food waste piece throughout the entire presentation. These are Hatch chilies. How many of y'all love Hatch chilies, right? Too bad we only get them about a couple weeks or a month out of the year, right? Unless you freeze them and can them. the birth of the Neolithic Revolution is something else. I mean, it really is pretty amazing whenever you study history and you look at how the Neolithic Revolution was happening independently of each other throughout various parts of the world. You know, for quite a long time we were hunters and gatherers, a lot longer than we were agriculturalists, and at that point in time somebody had developed the understanding of, if I cut this plant and put it in soil, well, what do you know, it continues to grow. You know, that actually preceded the propagation of seeds. So we first started off with vegetative propagation through cuttings, and then we developed the seed propagation. Huge, huge, huge jump in mankind at that point in time. One of the things that we realized is, well, now we can all stay put in one area, and we can increase populations in one area. And not only can we increase populations in one area, but now we got a lot of other time to do other things. You know, at that point in time, hunting and gatherers were actually viewed as the lazy people, and the ones that were out working the fields were viewed as the high-skilled, the hard workers. What happened was, and a phenomenal book out there, Farmers for 40 Centuries by King. I highly recommend reading that book. This professor went to Korea and China and Japan and saw how they farmed for 4,000 years sustainably by using all organic waste. They composted, and I mean composted, all right? Night soil, and when you died, you got your own compost heap, and you went in that heap. You know, and hopefully you got to build it maybe even before, and that was like you knew that was going to be your heap. But they went and they farmed for 4,000 years sustainably, and they had large populations. They had 1 million people in a city at a time, and they were farming right outside of that city. And they were maintaining fertility in their soils without chemicals and without heavy machinery and without specialization. They were diverse in their gardens. They grew a lot. They had unbelievable irrigation systems that they did. And then the Industrial Revolution comes around, right? And we started understanding that, and because of the birth of agriculture, we're able to then create the Industrial Revolution, because now we had mechanics, and we had doctors, and we had preachers, and we had professors, and we had other occupations other than farming. We also got banks from agriculture. We got money from agriculture. We got language, we got math, we got trade. All that was developed from agriculture, and it allowed for the birth of the Industrial Revolution to take place. When the Industrial Revolution occurred, well, we really were able to move off of the farm and move more into the cities and create these other occupations I was talking about. And I wanted to make the point that the Industrial Revolution is occurring right now at different time periods across the world. So even though we're far, far advanced, if you go to some developing countries, you almost feel like you're taking a step back in time. The Industrial Revolution brought across mechanized farming, you know, and coming from being a farmer, you know, a lot of this made sense, this natural progression of, hey, well, now I can go from producing a little over 20 bushels of corn per acre to well over 160 bushels of corn per acre. And now I'm in this nice air-conditioned tractor. It's GPS driven. You know, organic farming's hard work. You know, when Cliff Caskey told me to go do weed control, do you know what that meant? That meant go get the machete, all right, and chop weeds. And I was out there swinging and hacking and chopping weeds. And so organic farming is very, very hard. So it made sense when we created a mechanized agricultural system that farmers naturally progress that way. I mean, it was easier, you know. And then especially after World War II, when we had the pesticides and chemical fertilizers that really helped the progression of our production of our plants. That was a natural progression. That made sense to these farmers at that time. I understand that, being a farmer. You know, that definitely, you know, I don't blame anybody for going in that direction at all, you know, at that point in time. Because we didn't quite understand the limitations of the resources of soil and water and organic matter and bacteria and fungi, nematodes and protozoa, and the beautiful things that make plants and food and us to live. We didn't understand those limitations at that point in time. We thought it was endless. We thought we had plenty of water and plenty of soil. This time in 1940s, and another great book that I'm reading right now that I highly recommend is called The Worst Hard Time. And it was about the Great Depression and really about how we evolved with the farm bill at where we are now, and being commodity farmers on large-scale agriculture systems. And but it's pretty amazing when you look at our farming practices and how the food system really became very, very complex after the birth of the Industrial Revolution and then as we became mechanized. This chart over here just shows you that one farmer used to produce food for about 19 people in the 40s, and then today we're about 150 now. So one farmer produces food about 150 people. There's a lot of positives to that. I hear a lot of negativity, a lot about the large-scale agriculture, and I understand it, but there is a lot of beauty in the fact that we have become so productive that we can provide food for 150 people as one farmer. There's 7 billion of us on this planet right now. All right, there's going to be 9.5 billion of us by 2050, 2075, around there. We've got to figure out how to be really productive. However, we've got to figure out how we can be sustainable at the same time. And that's where the crossroads are merging, and we're getting there. Once again, I said I'm optimistic. We'll get there. These food systems have become complex now, right? So you have your farmer, and then you have your distribution channels all the way down to what comes on your plate. The reason why this is important for composting is really it comes down to nature's law of return. Okay? Anytime, how many of y'all are gardeners here? A good handful of y'all. If you harvest something from your garden, it's very, very important that you put that organic matter back at your soil. Every time I harvest a tomato, I put a handful of compost back. It's a give and take. That's how we built soil over time. So as organic matter grows, it falls to the ground naturally and provides the nutrients and the water holding capabilities for next year's growth. That's how life works. We're all going to be compost someday. All living things that come from the soil are supposed to go back to the soil. And has anybody ever been to West Texas? Big Bend region, right? How's that soil over there? That's not good, right? There's not a lot of organic matter going back to that soil. Now, if you go to old growth forest, if you go to Oregon, Washington, you go to some of these other, great areas that have got a lush green environment, a lot of organic matter is going back to that soil. You've got good looking soil, right? Well, no different with anything that we harvest on large scale harvesting of, whether it's these big monoculture farms of corn, wheat, soy, cotton, any of that. When we pull organic matter from that soil, it is just as important as at your home garden that we put that organic matter back on the soil. And we're going to talk about that. But what I mean by food waste loss or organic matter being lost is that exactly. It's organic matter that's taken away from the soil that's not putting itself back on the soil. All right? That's one of the largest values that I see in composting is the fact that we're taking what was pulled from the soil and putting back onto the soil. And so when you look at the different chains here, we have our farm, we have production losses on the farm. Grains is only 2%. We don't lose a lot on the farm. Seafood, however, it's not really on a farm, but we do lose a lot of seafood off the boats, off of nets, bycatching. And then fruits and vegetables we do because they're perishables. Meats, not so much. Milk's not so much. But the beauty kind of about this category of food waste on production loss on the farm is that this stuff typically stays on the farm. All right, so when this organic matter is lost, whenever I would cull a peach or whenever a peach would fall on the ground, Cliff Caskey told me, you leave that peach on the ground. That's staying on the ground. And that's when a light bulb clicked in my head of, oh, that's the cycle of life. We're supposed to leave that. And in fact, we actually had a guy that would come by and pay a little bit to go pick all the peaches off the ground, and he would eat them, which is even a better call. So even the culls that would fall to the ground sometimes would still be eaten by humans, which was great. Post-harvesting, handling, and storage losses, we've gotten efficient in industrialized countries on post-harvest handling and storage. And same with processing and packaging. If you go to developing countries, this is where your food loss is, okay? It's on this side of the food system. When you come here to industrialized countries, your food loss system is really the largest pieces to the pie are over here. If you can look, we lose 27% grains, over 30% seafood, a little under 30% on fruits and vegetables, and then meats 12% and milk 17%. And so this is our portion that we focus on how can we really get this material either in our own mouths or in animals' mouths or the mouths of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, and protozoa in the soil. All right? That's where it needs to go along that chain. This is total loss over here, and this is food consumed. And so you can see this is how we get to where we lose upwards of 40% of our entire food that we produce. Largely fruits and vegetables are more perishable items. I was a little surprised actually on milk being 20%. Seems like milk at home gets spoiled a lot more, so I was expecting that to be a little higher, right? So just kind of running through these losses on the farm. We talked about 2% for potatoes, 8% on sweet corn, and 15% for wheat, fruit, and vegetables. This is just food that's never harvested, a lot for pests and diseases and weather, economics, labor shortages, labor laws have really hurt a lot of farms, especially in Georgia in 2008 with those labor laws, upwards of 30% of the total oranges were just left on the field because nobody was there to pick them. Same with food safety scares. And the good news, though, like I said, is a lot of this organic matter, if you're to try to make light of this situation, the organic matter is staying on the farm. Post-harvest is typically culling. It's just doesn't meet the market standards, and so that it gets lost there on the farm. What I've noticed is small-scale farms will still compost this. All right, if they're pulling it and they're culling it, it's going to the compost pile. And so that is a little bit of a good news on that. I've got some slides, a lot of slides I'm going to roll through, so I'm just going to keep on moving down the chain. This is losses in production. Like I said, a lot of our production facilities have become very efficient. I was working on a project at Frito-Lay in San Antonio with this one. This is how we would collect. This is going to animal feed. All right, a lot of production waste goes to animal feed, and you know what it comes down to with these processing plants is economics, right? They say, look, I'm producing 2 of these trucks a week. Can I go to a cattle producer and will he come and pick it up for free, or should I go to a compost pile, and how much is that compared to the landfill? So it's all economics, and that makes sense. I believe in the food systems. In order for us to be sustainable, it always has to make business sense, or else it's hard for the mass public out of good heart to do things. If we can make business sense and environmental sense at the same time, then we're going in the right direction. But this was interesting. So I told the guy, I said, look, we'd love to make this animal feed. Do you know what's in it? And so they went and they got a nutrition fact sheet of their trimmings. This is mainly potatoes. This is all your potato chips you get pretty much here in Central Texas comes out of this processing plant. And, still 2 grams of protein per serving, 110 calories. And I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm like, man, this it's not bad. I mean, you can almost make that into something for human. High carbs, though. This is another, so this is distribution. So this is even after the processing plant. This is a project we worked on where, it's just inconsistent refrigeration in the truck, and it was 50,000 pounds of diced tomatoes. And I didn't really know what to do with all these diced tomatoes. I mean, it was quite a bit of material, and so we did take that to the compost site, and just a whole lot. We had to return the boxes because they want those nice wooden crates back. But losses in distribution really happens from, these trucks, refrigeration trucks, which, by the way, was a huge jump in the agricultural chapters of our history when we developed refrigeration trucks. Your average product travels 1,500 miles off the supermarket shelf. All right, 1,500 miles is how long it took from the farm to where you're at today here in Austin. And that would never have been the case without refrigeration trucks. All right, and so, but these refrigeration trucks aren't perfect. They lose their cooling systems in them. They get in accidents. They get held up on time delays. And so you're left with stuff like this, where you have 50,000 pounds of diced tomatoes that have already been diced and packaged and put in these big boxes and ready to go. And unfortunately, they didn't make it. Losses in retail. This is where I focus a lot of my efforts these days now, is in the retail market. This was at HEB. I started up the HEB composting program here in Austin. We went to every HEB store and really tried to get it off the ground on more or less pre-consumer to back of house where they pull all the coals and so forth. But, these, and I'll tell you, the retail market, once again, they're not going to do landfill diversion unless it makes economic sense for them. And the problem on the retail market with these large distribution chains is they sign big contracts, typically across the board on their waste disposal contracts. So they have unbelievably low landfill rates. All right, HEB has one landfill hauler for all their stores. All right, and so they've got it. So to be competitive and to do the right thing and divert their food scraps from the landfill, it's a challenge. It's hard to make that make business sense for us and then also for them. Because at the end of the day, the reason why landfill rates are so cheap is because at the end of the day, you're taking food waste and you're throwing it in a hole and you're covering it up and you're calling it a day. That's one of the cheapest ways to handle food waste, unfortunately, in our current system, compared to putting it into a big compost pile and mixing it and adding water and turning it and then having inventory and storage and processing it and then bagging it. There's a lot of moving parts to that compared to throwing it in a hole, covering it up, and calling it a day. All right. So it's a challenge, but we will eventually get there. We're already getting there. And I'm going to run through a lot of the projects that we're working on. But this one right here was, scrubbing dumpsters. I've been in a lot of dumpsters at like 2 in the morning, and not even necessarily dumpster diving, but like this one, scrubbing grounds. And I can't even tell you some of the things that we've seen before in this. In compost piles commercially, we see everything that you would see in trash. Okay, so everything from car transmissions to the grossest things you could think of. I'm not even going to mention. One of the problems in the retail market that I see at grocery stores is that they're highly trained to have fully stocked shelves. All right. One of the sushi chefs I was working with at these HEB chains, and probably shouldn't even say that, but anyways, so I said, look, all it takes at the end of the day is depackaging this and throwing this in the compost dump. So you go, I don't have time for that, and it's really sad when you look at all of those sushi prepackaged stuff, and they're not cheap. They're $10 a pop, at least at 9 o'clock at night, throw a 50% off sticker on them or something and sell them cheap and get them off the shelf, But here, and the chef's saying, I don't have time for that. And see, what I see when I hear that remark is there's a disconnect in the understanding of our food system. This chef has not worked on a fisherman's boat, all right? Guarantee you. Or he has not worked in the field before and understood the cycle of life on the nature's law of return, and what I was talking about earlier. Everything that comes from the soil needs to go back to the soil to continue to grow food. He didn't know that. I didn't know that whenever I was a bartender, when I was a chef at a restaurant before I went to school and learned that. I didn't know that. I've thrown away tons and tons of food waste, and I never had the light bulb click in my head of, hey, you're throwing away a resource that has to either be in our mouths, animals' mouths, or back into the mouths of our little microbes in our soil. So there's a disconnect in the food system of an understanding of how food is made and how it's prepared and how we got to continue to grow it and make it and prepare it and sell it. Because I think a lot of chefs, if they were just to come out and visit farmers and then go and visit compost facilities and even go and visit food banks, I think then they would be educated on the food system, and then they would take more pride and value in food waste. And I do apologize for using that word. I should use food residuals or another word, because it's not really wasted if it's going to the compost site or to other people. But the losses in the retail market's just huge. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't even know why I buy food after knowing the combination of the locks on the dumpsters of HEBs. This food's great. It looks wonderful. It looks like a salad every day, a giant salad, and it's really, really good-looking food. Dive. On this documentary, Dive, what I love so much is at the end they throw a party for their friends and family of all dumpster food. And I think they didn't know it was dumpster food at the party. Regardless, it was great. I mean, it's like 5-star meal, Anyway, so on average, 1 in 7 truckloads of perishables delivered to supermarkets is thrown away. And that's a lot of money. They call it shrink too in the supermarket losses, and unfortunately, that's not really too frowned upon in the retail market. If you're a supervisor and you're looking over your managers and they've thrown a lot of food away, well, sometimes they're doing a really good job on quality control is the way they look at that. And the like I was saying earlier on the stocking of shelves, they're trained to fully stock shelves. At 9:30 at night, they don't want to see 5 apples on the apple shelf. They want to see a full range of apples on there. Same with the sushi and the rolls. But there are some local grocery stores around here that I do like going into late at night and seeing just a few items on the shelf, and that's awesome. So this is an area that we've really got to work on here in the United States. And as countries become more developed, they're going to be running into this too that we need to work on as well. On a positive note, they do a good job with working with the Capillary Food Bank, and they donate a lot of their non-perishable goods. So the restaurants, caterers, fast foods, this is where I'm guilty as charged on throwing away a lot of food waste back in my day when I worked in the restaurants. This was at the F1 track here, the caterers. The policy here was when the food was done at the end of the night, they had to dispose of it. And even the chefs were like, this is crazy. Why are we throwing away perfectly good food? You know, what's going on here? Can't we like wave a big flag that says everybody come and get free food real fast before we throw this away, or come and get it for 50% off, you know? But yeah, I'm talking trays and trays of food. And in fact, this is a true story. Since I'm just representing myself right now, I can tell this, I believe. But there was a private party that was thrown that Sunday night. This is probably the craziest composting story I've got, y'all. So hold on, put your seatbelts, get ready. All right. But there was a private party that was thrown that Sunday night, and what I saw was unbelievable. I walk into the back of this kitchen actually, and the chefs are just mad. They're throwing stuff. They're just really, really angry. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on, because wheeling back is this beautiful just trays of unbelievable seafood, $20,000 worth of scallops and oysters and crab, just unbelievable. And what happened was there was a private party that was thrown by the highest up individual there at CODA F1, and he threw this party on the fly. So these chefs had to go out and buy all this food that day, prepare this food for a 500-person party, and then when they wheeled the food out, the individual that was hosting the party said, you know what, there's a few people here that I don't like that weren't invited. Party's over, shut it down, send the food back. $20,000 worth of unbelievable food. And I had been in food waste all day. All right, I had been working. I had been in food waste, literally in food waste all day. And so when I saw it, they're like, so the good news is they're saying, all right, everybody eat up. You know, it's in the back. And I couldn't even eat. I mean, my stomach, I was so tired. This is on day 3 of being in food waste, and I just, it was just amazing. So 20,000 pounds or $20,000 worth of food material goes straight to the compost pile. There's no doubt we have way too big portion sizes in America. You know, 17% of meals is uneaten, and 55% of these are potentially leftovers or not taken home. Pre-consumer food waste, which is the easiest to capture. All right, if you ever work in a restaurant, you have anybody work in a restaurant? Has worked in a restaurant, right? Okay, yeah. So you have, when you go to the dish station, all right, you have a separate bag for linens, right? You put your linens here. You put your silverware in the silverware tray. You stack, some of those I work at are very particular about stacking the right plates, the big ones here, the small ones here. You stack all this, and then you throw everything in one bin? You know, like, wait a second. We just went through the separation process, and then we end here at the trash bin, you know. And so, you know, my point is it's actually that whole separation process just needs to continue. Right? And so now you put all your food waste here, and you put your plastics and metals and glasses here, and then you put your trash here, right? It's just a natural progression. The good thing is restaurants are catching on. More and more and more every single day are doing that. Just large portion sizes, though, once again, I mean, that's where we see a lot of food waste for post-consumer, but pre-consumer is so easy. I mean, you're sitting here cutting up onions and carrots and stuff, and you got your leftovers, your onion peels. You can go right into your own little compost bin right there. I mean, pre-consumer is just a no-brainer. It's so easy. And once again, I think the biggest thing is for chefs to understand how you produce food, because then they'll value that and they'll actually compost it. Losses in a household, guys, man, yeah, we lose 25% roughly of the food that we buy to the trash can. I see, sir, you're shaking your head that you don't, or you don't. I'll run through this real fast, and we'll open this up for full discussion if that's all right. But I hope you're shaking your head like, no, I don't do that, because you're pretty good on planning when you go to the grocery store. Because I agree. I don't feel like I throw away 25% of what I buy. But they're saying families on average, and by the way, a phenomenal book is where I got that out of, American Wasteland by Jonathan Bloom. A really, really, really good book out there on food waste. And which it's a lot of money too. We're looking $1,300 to $2,200. Global food waste, y'all. We're roughly right at about 30 to 50% of our total food produce. We produce 4 billion tons. We're disposing of about 1.2 to 2 billion tons of food waste. The developing countries are at 630 million metric tons. Industrialized countries, 670 million metric tons. Huge difference, once again, on where this food waste is happening, right? Industrialized countries, this food waste is happening at home. It's happening on the retail sector. It's really from the consumer side here. Over here, it's lack in technologies of post-harvest storage and transportation, okay? We throw away 10 times more food than Southeast Asians do. We throw away, in the United States, enough more food than sub-Saharan Africa produces. You know, it's a really amazing thing when we got a billion people almost without food, and we got a billion people that are overweight. We got 7 billion people on this planet. We can do a better job. Food waste, 630 million metric tons disposed of. Yeah, the scale on that graph was just really like in the 600 to 700, so that's why you're seeing a big jump. But it's really only 40 million metric tons, which is still a lot, you know. But yeah, 630 million metric tons disposed of in industrialized countries, 670 million metric tons in, I'm sorry, opposite, 670 in industrialized, 630 in developing. Where's all this stuff go? All right, well, it goes to the landfill. Largest component, single component in our landfill, 20% of the stream, 33 million tons, 23% of all of our methane emissions in the U.S. The U.S. Composting Council here has the new recovery hierarchy. And how are we doing on time right now?
Well, we have about 20 minutes left.
Okay, 20 minutes. I'm going to run through this real fast. So, of course, the compost pile is not the best we can do. We can do better with people and animals. I wanted to show y'all that only 3% of the food waste actually gets composted. The benefits of compost is unbelievable. Like I said, the organic matter, the nutrients, we support the diversity of microorganisms, the moisture in our soils, stabilizing soil pH, unbelievable. Some of these local projects, I already talked about F1. They're really on board with the sustainability movement. So here we are with all the chefs over here. We've set up eco stations where you have trash, recycle, compost. This is one of the only events I've ever worked. We do ACL and South by Southwest, and I travel, do other large events. This event, people got it. All right, they're not from the U.S. They came from out of the country. I ended up just putting every compost bin we had out there because they were doing it. Less than 5% contamination, right? Whole Foods, phenomenal program. We do 3D signs there. The best signs there are is 3D shadow boxes. It's in all languages. Anytime I set up a compost program where there's multi-languages, 3D shadow boxes is where it's at. You know, all small events too. Composting on site here at Trinity University. This is the Earthshare tub where students are composting on site. They're doing all pre-consumer waste out of their cafeterias. This W Hotel, once again, shadow boxes. That's right there at the back area where we do green 5-gallon buckets. Dell Diamond, we're about to hopefully pull the trash cans out of Dell Diamond. One of the things you don't think about when you set up a composting program at a baseball field is home run balls. If you take a look over there, that's a baseball that went right through the container. That was not compostable, all right? However, we got autographs on it. It was great. This is St. David's Hospital here. We did a whole presentation of sitting behind the tables for multiple days. And this is the Apple computers. Once again, presentations, getting the word out, develop green teams. By the way, on Apple computers, I really told them, I said, the signage needs to be iPads, right? I mean, don't y'all, and can't you just go up with your container and the iPad will tell you if it's compost, recycle, or trash? What's up, Apple? I mean, aren't we there yet? And this is 4 seasons. We do cart tippers now on the dual stream packers where one side's compost, one side's recycle. All these buildings, mainly downtown, are built for one waste stream. Architects design buildings for one waste stream, and we really have 3 right now: trash, recycle, compost. Architects need to get on board with these programs. They need to understand the building designs, so we have to get creative and have a split compactor where one side's compost, one side's recycle. We do cart tipper options now, the whole green team party and everything, to get the employees on board. All the schools, we have over 60,000 kids here in Austin composting in their classrooms. We try to encourage for the kids to do it on their own. And once again, 3D signs. And now that we're in middle schools, every single school in Hayes is composting. All the middle schools, the high schools, you go to Texas State, you're composting now. You go to UT, you're composting. Now when you go home in Austin, you're composting. If you're one of the luckies that live in the 5 areas, I just got the green pilot program cart. And I'll wrap it up with the good old pile of food waste there from the schools at our pile. So please let me know what questions and answers you have. I wanted to end that on a positive note so you can see all the great stuff that's happened locally.
Thank you. Raise your hands high, and I'll bring the microphone to you.
Yes, Crockett Gravy. I'm on your graph. You were showing the food wasted for the industrialized countries versus the developing countries. The 670 metric tons versus 630 metric tons.
Yes, sir.
One thing that's not shown in the graph is how many people are there in industrialized countries versus the people in developing countries. They're obviously a much larger number in the latter.
It's a very, very good point, and I'll take that point and make another chart with that on there because that needs to be a representation of populations. It's a good point. I don't have that answer. I don't know that for exact on industrial.
We have a question from Joe. Would you stand up?
Yeah. I was wondering, say you just put your fruits and vegetables in your trash and it goes to the landfill, which is basically dirt. What's the problem with that? I mean, why?
So the problem is you think of soil as a bank account, okay? And so when you deposit organic matter over time, your bank account keeps growing and growing and growing, right? And when you take organic matter away from it, your garden or a farm, you decrease in your bank account. And if you keep pulling food, organic matter from it, you're eventually going to get that $35 a month overdraft fee. All right? And so what happens when food waste goes to the landfill is we just depleted the organic matter of your farm, and eventually you're going to be just like West Texas or Big Bend. You're not going to have productive soil, and you cannot continue to grow food.
But I mean, I'm talking about your household stuff.
Yes.
It's going to go in your trash.
Well, your household food came from a farm.
Oh, I see.
So that farm is decreasing in organic matter. It will eventually become infertile enough to grow food if that practice continues.
We have a question here. Joe, would you stand up?
Joseph Hunt. Yes, I was wondering if you could comment about the city's efforts to do composting at your own home, where they train you at the public libraries and everything.
Yeah.
And also, I would like for you to talk about why we're not composting at things like Austin City Limits Festival when we are the F1.
Okay. So 2 things. One was the City of Austin's home rebate composting program. Fortunate enough to teach that class. We've got a lot coming up. You get $75 off of any home composting, 75% off of any home composting bin up to $75 if you decrease your trash cart from a 96-gallon cart down to a 35-gallon cart and you take a home composting course, which is at the library or city hall or at the farmers markets. Really neat deal. Also available online. That's exactly right. You can take the online course. It's a phenomenal program. It's reached over 3,500 people, I believe. So the second thing is the ACL Music Festival. We do compost at ACL Music Festival. We compost in the food court area, and then we compost for back of house. And all food prep areas compost. We can improve, and we're doing it every single year. We're 60, I don't have the exact numbers in my head, we're around 60% diversion at ACL. So the C3 production is huge on it. That's one of the beauties. Contamination rates are very, very low because we have EcoStation monitors. So we have people there that are volunteers that sit there and show them what goes where. So very, very low. And then also you have to use compostable products or recyclable products if you're a vendor at ACL, which is almost a necessity when you do large programs like that.
Douglas?
Thank you for the interesting presentation. I have two questions related to the mechanics of composting at home. The first one is, assuming you're collecting some sort of food waste in your kitchen and you want to put it outside in a composting bin, what's an optimal size for that?
Okay.
And then the second question related to that is, after it sits there for 3 months or whatever, what do I do with this stuff that's been composted?
I apologize. I should have maybe geared more of this around like backyard composting for y'all. The optimum size bin is a small bin, something that works for you. Maybe a gallon and a half. Your coffee container is a perfect bin. It's a great use of reuse. You can store that under your sink if you clean it often. You can store it in your freezer. Freezer's a great place, or you can be like me that stores it on the back porch. And then take that to your compost pile, dump it into your compost pile, dump 3 to 5 more parts, browns or leaves to that, turn it every once in a while, add some water to it, and 6 months down the line, you're going to start getting what looks like good soil. Yeah.
As far as the compost bin, they generally say 1 cubic yard, so 3 by 3. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, size a container in the back of your bin. Yeah.
Spread it on the ground?
Yeah, so finished compost, finished compost is going to be used anywhere. You're going to use soil, top dress your yard, 1/4 to 1/2 inch on turf. For mulches, I recommend 50% mulch, 50% compost for your trees and your shrubs. For soil mixes, I recommend 30% compost, 30% sand, 30% clay. For just a regular soil mix, if it's going to be a container, you want to lighten that up a little bit, have some more sand and more compost. But it is unbelievable. We just top dressed all the soccer fields out at San Marcos, the 5 Mile Dam. We just put 600 cubic yards on it. It is neon green. You drive by it, you cannot miss it. People drive by and they're like, what happened over there? And that's called compost. Top dress your yard. And what you do with top dressing, you can hire somebody to do this. They even have the blow trucks, but literally dump a pile here, get the rake out and rake it into your yard, give it water it in, and in a couple of days, or about a week, it's gonna fully settle into your grass, and it unbelievable. Take my word for it, take pictures, show it off, all right, because we've got to spread the word on top dressing. We need to get 5% organic matter in everyone's yards. We're down about 1% or a little less.
We have a question here. Would you stand and say your name, please?
Sure. Hi, my name is Brandy, and thank you. This is really, really interesting, and I'm glad to see your presentation. At first, I wanted to sort of follow up on the question about why not send it to the landfill. What's the problem with that? And I guess, Joe, you asked that question. When it goes in the landfill, it gets mummified. It doesn't break down in a positive way to make the soil. It kind of putrefies, and it creates methane, which is 21 times more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so it's a negative when it goes in the landfill, and it's a positive when it gets turned into compost. So you have a double win-win. And then I just had a personal question about composting. I was cleaning out the cabinet this morning and found some things, candy and some other things that were probably shouldn't be eaten anymore. And I really had a personal debate. Yeah.
Candy? Yeah. Candy, yeah. Bacteria loves candy.
Really?
Oh,
so it's okay.
man,
I just didn't know if that was going to be like total magnet for animals if I put it in the compost pile.
Ants love sugar too. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, you want to break it up. Yeah. Candy is excellent compost. Yeah, sugar is one of the, and in fact, a lot of the additives that people sell on the market to help heat up your compost is nothing really but sugars. So yeah, candy's great. I never actually heard of candy for the compost. Yeah, it's great.
We have a question here. Would you stand, please, and say your name?
Yeah, Jim McCall. Have you given any thought to, say, kind of retrofitting apartment buildings for composting?
Yeah. Far as on-site composting or collection of food waste, because on-site it is, and that's one of the things where what we run into is a lot of apartment complexes. We always say, well, if you can have a compost ambassador, or somebody that's just willing to literally turn the pile every once in a while, and then go meet with your apartment manager and say, hey, I'm going to put this compost pile here, and if they can all go take the City of Austin, if they're a City of Austin resident, take their rebate program, they'll get the little kitchen collector bin, everybody's got the bin, they know what to do, what goes in there, go dump it in there, and if you could have a monitor there, turn the pile, that's awesome. That's what we do at our place. I turn for about 8 different families, and I literally spend 10 minutes a month composting for 8 families, so that apartment complexes is huge. We're going to eventually see a lot more food waste collection at apartment complexes. It's just as easy as recycling or disposal, trash disposal. All they got to do is take it from point A, their kitchen, down to point B, either the compost pile or the compost bin that gets collected. But usually it's going to be in small carts, it's a huge deal, especially in populations like San Marcos, where about 50% of your families live in multifamily residence.
We have a question from Pat Beulah.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we need your advice here at church. We need to improve our composting. We've heard complaints about, that's going to be a problem because we'll attract rats, insects, on and on and on.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that other than say you got to do it right and then you won't have a problem?
Right, yeah. It's what I hear every day. My job is, well, what about odors? What about pests? Well, really what it comes down to is keeping the container clean. And so, are you talking about composting on site or collection or either one? On site, yeah. So on site, it's really just making sure that the right materials go in there. So if it grows, it goes. That's the saying for on-site composting. If it grows, it goes. If it's a commercial composter, if it was once alive, it goes, okay? And so what I mean by that is if it grows, it goes. That means all vegetative material, all right? All of vegetative, no meats, bones, dairy, none of that stuff goes in your home compost pile. The reason why there's a difference between home composting and commercial composting, we build piles bigger than this room, and it reaches temperatures of about 180 degrees. We kill all human-known pathogens and weed seeds. It's called PFRP, pathogen further reduction point. We have to meet that. It's above 131 degrees for 5 straight days, 5 turns for a windrow. Here, you're not going to do that. Here, you're going to have a pile, you're going to have some leaves, and you're going to go throw your food waste in there, you're going to turn it and add some water. It's probably not going to heat up that much to kill off all the pathogens and weed seeds, so you don't put meats and bones and dairy that could carry pathogens, salmonella, E. coli, stuff like that. Here I would be happy to help y'all out. I'll come back and give a little demonstration, and we'll build a pile together, and let's make it an event. Let's get people out. Let's make it a fun little event to come and build the piles.
That's an exciting opportunity. Thank you. We have time for one more short question. Does anyone have one? Well, then I want to turn this back. Oh, here's.
We have one more
okay,
question.
Okay, one more. Crockett.
I can understand why you said meats, but why do you include milk in that? Is you don't want to put milk in the spoiled milk in the composting?
Yeah, I apologize if I didn't say that. Yeah, that's what I meant by dairy. Meats, bones, dairy, and milk. Why not put that in there? It's the same issue as meats, though. It could have pathogens associated with it. It can create odors.
Well, you have about 2 minutes for some concluding words.
Well, thank you all very much, and I hope everyone's encouraged to at least go start their home compost pile. Look online at the city's website for the home composting rebate if you're interested in actually going and purchasing one. That way you get the 75% off. And just spread the word, y'all. This is a big thing. You know, there's no reason why we should be wasting food, period. You know, the place for food is not in the landfill. It's either in our mouths or back on the soil or in the animals' mouths. So value food, please. And just thank you all very much for your time. And Brandy, you have one last thing you want to say?
Well, I think we're just about out.
I'm going to stick around.
We do. We're having a lunch at Central Market right after this presentation and on Lamar with our speaker. And so please consider coming to that luncheon. And we want to thank you again for coming and providing, enlightening us, really. I know very little about composting, so this is very exciting and tying in the history of agriculture and so forth, putting it in a much larger context in our food systems. So thank you. It's been a wonderful talk.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you.